Mnangagwa is reported to be safe following an explosion at an election campaign rally in Bulawayo. Well, the Zimbabwe president is not hurt and has been evacuated from the Y City Stadium, where he had been addressing supporters ahead of next month's elections. Unconfirmed reports indicate that Vice President Ekemba Mohadi was injured in the blast. There are also reports that several security personnel attached to VIPs were injured. Investigations are underway. Mnangagwa took power in November of 2017 after longtime leader Robert Mugabe stepped down following a military intervention. The July 30th vote is the first without Mugabe since independence in 1980. Well, to unpack the issue of security and the security contingent in Zimbabwe, we have on the line Derick Martyzak. A very good evening. We thank you very much for your time this evening. Essentially, was this attack expected?
I'm sorry, say again?
Was this attack expected?
No, it wasn't. Things have been very calm in the country in the build-up to the election. There has been some low-level intimidation in the rural areas, but generally the kind of extreme violence that we normally associate with the electoral period in Zimbabwe hasn't been there. So we weren't really expecting this kind of event.
Yeah.
Obviously, Mnangagwa came into power through the military intervention, and when you have something that looks very much like a coup, you can get this kind of backlash frequently occurring, but we don't know whether this blast is associated with that.
Yeah. Now, you know, this comes at a time where Zimbabwe is preparing to go to polls come July 30th. Is this not going to be instilling fear in voters?
Probably the major problem there would be that it provides a motivation for the Mnangagwa administration to increase the military presence wherever he goes and perhaps through the various constituencies ahead of elections. So that's a real concern. Mnangagwa's security has been a much lower level than that of Robert Mugabe. And this might be an incentive for him to increase that security, to increase the deployment of the military, and people wouldn't really be able to complain that the country is being militarized ahead of elections, because Mnangagwa could justifiably say he needs to beef up his security.
Yeah. You know, this weekend we saw the SADC Troika meeting in Rwanda and Angola also discussing issues of security in the DRC and Lesotho, but Zimbabwe seemingly was not on the agenda. And then we also spoke to MDC leader Emmerson Mnangagwa just a couple of moments ago, with him also saying it doesn't come as a surprise because there have been continued attacks in Zimbabwe on political leaders over the past couple of years. Do you then think that this was an oversight?
No, not at all. As you said earlier, this bomb blast is completely unexpected. Emmerson Mnangagwa has reported that he has been receiving threats, but for somebody to go to these kind of extremes certainly wasn't expected. All political leaders from both sides of the political divide have been preaching non-violence ahead of the elections, so this really wasn't expected. That call to refrain from violence seems to have been heeded by most of supporters from both political parties. So SADC quite rightly could think that all was calm in Zimbabwe ahead of the polls.
Definitely. And, you know, with the polls just around the corner, let's just describe or characterize a sort of security contingent that Zimbabwe does need to put forward.
Well, the police have indicated they'll be on high alert looking for instances of electoral violence because the Zanu PF itself wishes to see that there's no electoral violence. The police are likely to act impartially, and as has not been the case in the past, they might clamp down on people from both political parties, both major political parties, who might be seeking to engage in violence. So there are also specific courts set up to deal with electoral violence. There are things called liaison committees between the political parties to try and act as early warning systems which will clamp down on violence. special investigative committees to investigate electoral violence. So there are a lot of mechanisms in place to try and stop that violence from taking place. And in this election, for virtually the first time, Zanu PF itself has an interest in making sure that that violence doesn't happen.
Definitely. We thank you very much for your time this evening. Derick Martyzak, analyst from the Institute of Security Studies, around that attempted bomb blast that took place in Zimbabwe in Bulawayo this afternoon. Let's take a short break here on SABC News. Do stay tuned.
Our stories.
How do I begin?
Our lives. When all seems to fail, we will raise our voices a bit louder for our justice.
Well, I went into absolute shock. My whole body was shaky. I couldn't hold a phone, but there he was. I couldn't believe the nonchalant that they were still in the area 2 weeks later.
And in times when the justice system is not able to help us with our individual battles,
I'm willing to do anything. What are you doing? Nothing. Feeling sorry for yourself? No, it's not an option.
These are our stories on Cutting Edge Channel 404.